Hello, my friends. How are you? And welcome back. So I'm back and let's talk about some news. So what I wanted to start with, obviously, is the story of this market collapse after US imposed 100% or however many percent tariffs on China. And initially, the way how this news has been announced is like, China has made this move of being super aggressive and US had to retaliate and it was completely unprovoked and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? So this is how I see this story developing. And first, I want to bring you some facts, and then I'm going to talk about what I feel it means and how it connects to the bigger story of the financial system. So my understanding is that around springtime, US and China had this gentleman agreement that they're going to freeze their tariffs at the same level, whatever status quo level. And then they wanted to negotiate and they kind of promised not to make any moves in terms of like sanctions or trade restrictions against each other until this matter is solved. And at the same time, over the last 2 months, my recollection of facts is that US has imposed additional sanctions against something like 25 or 29 Chinese companies. And then US said that certain Chinese ships, they cannot dock in several ports where US has influence. And then US said that China shouldn't be flying over the territory of Russia because it gives them unfair advantage in terms of air travel and the cost of air travel between Europe and China. And they have been doing this consistently and they have been, adding on different sanctions and restrictions. And then they said, at some point that Chinese people cannot go to study at American universities. And then there was some restrictions that NVIDIA and some other companies cannot sell chips and certain other materials and semiconductors to US. And so there were many, many restrictions, right? And suddenly when China made a move and said, okay, if you keep doing this, and we have been, apparently, so China didn't retaliate, at least in a big way. And finally, China said, okay, now we're going to restrict the sale of rare earth materials where we have practically the global monopoly, and you would have to come and apply for a specific trade license if you want to buy rare earths from us. Then somehow this is viewed as completely unexpected, unprovoked, unacceptable move. And, the Trump administration goes ahead and imposes 100% tariffs on China, and then the whole market collapses. And, the surprising part for me has been like, are you seriously telling me that you haven't expected that? Are you seriously saying that you have been making, and I'm not talking about economic justifications of whether this is right or wrong. I'm purely saying that you have been making these, steps that are not friendly, and I'm being generous here. And you haven't expected a country that is, big and powerful and has a strong economy and has a long history and certain level of national pride. You haven't expected this country to retaliate or protect their interests or make a move against you. What is that? Are you serious? How delusional or how obnoxious do you need to be at that level to not expect somebody to push back against your obviously adversarial steps? Seriously? So that's my point. And then I do believe they're going to roll it back. It's going to take some, I know, maneuvering and posturing, and I think they're going to roll it back, right? But the whole level of surprise and kind of who do you think you are, China, to make this move? Like, how dare you to uh, restrict your trade and protect your interests? It's like, seriously? It's so funny, it's not even funny. And then it got me thinking, because I do believe that right now we have this class of people, we could call them elites, but I don't think they're necessarily elites in a sense that they have the decision-making power, or they may not necessarily be the richest. In some cases, they're probably like puppets. But what we have is like a group of interests where people view themselves as somebody who is completely detached from their country of origin. People would say that, you know, they work at this international organizations, or maybe they work for international banking system, and they have international work experience and educational experience. And it almost feels that they're completely detached from any particular country. And not only they're detached from the country, they don't care about like national interests of a country. All they do is they want to enforce certain global agenda, be it in the area of climate or sanctions or tariffs or freedom of capital movement or regime change or imposing democracies or replacing democracies. So they have this high level helicopter view about how things should be. And when the country of origin and or where the country where they are, you know, residing says that it's not necessarily in the national interest of the people in this country, or it's not necessarily in the national interest of the majority of people who live there, everybody is like, it doesn't matter. You have to see a bigger picture. We have to sacrifice for the greater good. And, you know, I kind of looked myself at myself in the mirror, and I questioned myself because I was one of them. You know, I, like, if you don't know, I was born in Russia and I grew up in Tajikistan. And then I studied in Finland and I worked in Germany, and I ended up having a passport of Luxembourg. And now I live between Luxembourg and Switzerland. So, and I worked for projects and companies from like all continents. So, in a sense, I do have a feeling that with my skill set and my know-how and my experience, I can live anywhere and I can work anywhere, and my skills are transferable. But I don't like this global agenda anymore. And the reason why I feel like I am against it is because when I moved from Russia to Europe, the reason why I liked Europe better was because when I was in Europe, I didn't feel like I am an exception. I felt like the majority of people around me are happy, and they, you know, I was younger at the time, so it was the age where everybody was kind of getting married and buying houses and starting families and having kids. And there was this, you know, general consensus around me that life is good, the future is optimistic. And generally speaking, it's not like an exception when you have good economic opportunities, when you feel optimistic about the future, when you're willing to have children, but it was the norm, right? And the reason why I am so much against this class of global people who don't care about one specific country, because it feels like this people who are making decisions about sanctions or wars or tariffs or like regime changes or green agenda or whatever agenda, they don't care that the vast majority of people in their country or around them not only are not supportive or not benefiting from these ideas or these initiatives, but actually are going to suffer. and they're going to suffer the most precisely because the type of the jobs or the type of the education or the type of finances people have is not necessarily easy to convert, like to, change country and move somewhere else. And this is what bothers me, because to a degree, it was kind of okay to have this idea that, oh, we can move anywhere, we can work anywhere, we could, study in one country, go and work in another country, and then marry somebody from a different country and send our kids to study somewhere else. It felt exciting, but it was only exciting, at least in my opinion, that's how I see it now, when you feel that you are not an exception, when you feel that you are having all these opportunities because there is this tide, the economic tide that lifts all the boats, right? All the ships. And right now, I have a strong sense that the way the economy is structured and the way how job opportunities are structured now and the way how financial system and debt pressure and the inflation and all these other things are impacting the majority of people, that being global, first of all, is not anymore as easy. And second of all, it becomes not even like an unfair advantage, but you really almost have to take advantage of other people if you continue this agenda. And the reason why I'm saying this is like going back to tariffs and financial system and globalist agenda questions. I feel like almost everybody now understands that economies in Europe and even in the US, even though they're bragging, are not doing great. If the economy in the US would be amazingly well, they didn't need all these tariffs and sanctions and going and attacking Venezuela and regime changing that. So economies are not doing well. And when economies are not doing well, you have this kind of opportunity, right? If you are at the top of the government. And I'm making stuff up. I don't have any specific access to any unique information. But what I'm thinking is that either the capital, the resources you have, you would invest in your country where you are because you care about the people around you and you want the roads to be clean, you want people to have jobs, you want school system to be good, you want traffic to be reasonable. So you want things to be taken care of. Or if you are at this globalist elite level, you are still being opportunistic and you are searching for how to squeeze other people, how to find the resource where I can take control or some kind of monopolistic power, or where can I push the debt, or where can I push my financial products, or where can I push financial limitations and use it as a leverage. And, I am finding myself completely against ideologically all these policies, even though for the last 20 years, I was one of the people who benefited from that, because of my education and kind of work experience and other things, because I feel like ignoring people around you and ignoring the country where you live, and not only ignoring, but almost saying, whenever I have the power, whatever I do, I don't care if people around me are going to lose jobs and suffer more and have less disposable income and suffer from inflation, just because I want to promote this other agenda. I feel this is a disgrace. And it is so unfortunate that my profession, compliance, is being used as a tool to enforce it. So I'm really curious because, being a compliance professional, I receive obviously all these updates and regulatory alerts that now this is sanctioned, this is under tariffs, this is restricted, this is not possible, this company is being added to this list, and that company or this person or this group has been added to that list. Every single day there is a bombardment of new restrictions, and now it goes both ways, right? So it's if you are somewhere where you're trying to be neutral, like in Dubai, you're super confused because you have all these partners who follow all these different frameworks. And yeah, it's not trivial to be a compliance professional these days. But you know, the fun part, not fun, I mean, quote unquote fun part, is that in the past, we seriously had a feeling that we are preventing crime, that we are catching the bad guys, that we are helping governments enforce good laws, that the results of our work are useful. And right now, when I read all these, restrictions about sanctions and tariffs and limitations and lists and like all of that, and it's like, I don't want to be a tool of this anymore. I mean, I still have to do it, right? Because I have to protect the companies where I contribute in one way or another. But the pride, the professional kind of standing of, around what we have to do and what we have to enforce, you understand that you are not actually adding value by enforcing these rules, because they're not good for the people, they're not good for the companies, and the only people these rules are helping are people I don't actually respect at all. So anyway, so that's my rant on this Sunday early afternoon about sanctions, tariffs, and globalist agenda. And maybe a hopeful thought where I want to end this conversation is that it cannot last. Like, there are too many people around me. There are so many people who were never interested in politics, who were never interested in like regulations. They're saying this, it doesn't make sense. It's not just unfair. This is ridiculous. Even like my daughter. So my middle daughter, she came back from Japan. She lived for 1 year in Japan. She came back to Switzerland and she says like, Mom, the level of intensity here about politics and dissatisfaction of people and how concerned everybody is and how frustrated young generation is so intense in comparison to Japan. She's like, we are the first generation, and I talked to her about it just yesterday. So they're the first generation where they think that their generation is going to have living standards lower than the parents. And it's not because they are lazy. It's not because they are not trying, but simply because like the level of economy is that they cannot, afford buying houses. The jobs they get are barely covering the rent in big cities, etc., etc. And they are not just frustrated, but they are becoming more active than I ever was at their age. So I think it's fascinating, but it also gives me hope because it cannot be like that, right? So anyway, on this happy note, it cannot be like that, so it has to get better. Let me just wish you a super, happy, peaceful, optimistic Sunday afternoon. I do believe that this whole sanctions thing is going to blow off and then it will fade away and some consensus is going to be found, but still it's wild, right? Have a good day, everybody. And I will catch you here next weekend.